Hi, I'm Amy Redman, and I'm so glad you've joined me to paint today. You're in for a great experience. Now, I want to let you know that I'll be painting at my pace, and that may not necessarily be your pace. So, the beauty of video is that you can push pause and catch up as you need to. You can also rewind and review a concept or a step that we've just gone over. There will also be drawing breaks, and that's a good time to catch up as well. Also, today's painting is really just inspiration, and it's my chance to guide you toward your own masterpiece. So I want you to create something that really speaks to you and make it your own in any way that you'd like to, whether it's just change a couple of colors or maybe add something else to the painting. Now, the most important thing here is to have fun. So, on that note, I'm going to suggest that you go throw on some of your favorite music, grab a refreshment, and let's get started. Cheers! To begin this painting, I started off by just giving myself a few straight lines for our stems and then a circle within a circle on top, and that's going to represent that little center part of our Gerber daisy. So, to start out, we're going to take our large flat brush, and let me just review our paint colors before we begin. We have our green oxide, chrome yellow, deep yellow, chrome orange, bright red, violet, and a raw umber, as well as our white in the middle. So we're going to paint our entire canvas here with just that white and yellow and give it that kind of just real pretty, creamy, buttery yellow appearance there. If you prefer a different background, you can always do that. But I'm going to go ahead and just use an up and down vertical brush stroke. I can still see my pencil marks through that pale yellow color, so I'm not worried about going right over them. And I'll continue with this all on the front here. I kind of like a little bit of the striation of the yellow and white together. Notice that I loaded my brush rather than mixed a yellow color and then applied it. Now, if you want something a little more solid, you can certainly do that. But I will tell you that it's difficult to get it exactly even between each side. Let's say if you start over here, if you've mixed a color and then you have to remix because you need more color, much easier just to apply the paint with both colors on the brush together and let them mix and mingle on there, and don't worry about it being exactly perfect in terms of the color in any one spot. So I'm just going to keep going like this. I'm also going to do my two side edges and my top edge. I can at some point turn this upside down and do my bottom edge as well and let that dry, but we don't want to have any wet paint on that edge while it's sitting on the easel, and otherwise you're going to have that stuck to your easel. So go ahead and keep going like that, and I'll be back in just a moment, okay? So I have finished now in putting the yellow background on. It's starting to dry a bit, so we're ready to begin starting to put on our daisies. So let's go with our medium flat brush. I'm going to dry this off, and I'm going to start by putting that little center in. And so I'm going to be adding a little bit of my green and some yellow, and then I'm going to tap that into that little center part. So it's the center circle that we gave ourselves, and we're tapping it in so that we get this nice texture of the green and yellow together. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Hopefully you can see your little drawings through. I can. So, and we'll do it on this one as well. Now I think I got not enough yellow in this one because I really do want it to have that variety of color. This one could be perhaps a touch darker. I'm going to touch that one up. And I think we're ready then to add our little petals. So we're going to stay with, actually we're going to stick with our small flat brush for the petals. So let's go with our small flat brush. Dry that one up the handle a little bit as well. And let's start with our center one there. I'm going to make that one orange, and then I'm going to do pink and purple on each side of it. So that gives, the pink and the purple have a little more similar color tones, yet they'll still be different, but the orange one will kind of, be set off a little bit there. So I'm actually going to do a little mix of my orange as well as my deep yellow. And I'm also going to take a little hint of white on my brush, and that way I'm going to get all three of these colors kind of mixing and mingling to create these really beautiful nuances on each petal. So I'm going to just work out from there, and I'm going to allow the brush to actually just be the right width and the right shape. So I can tap these off just a little bit at the end just to give them a nice finish to the end of the petal. And then I'll do another and another. I'm going to keep gradating out. And I can see that I'm starting to lose paint there. So that's telling me that I need to pick up a bit more of my three colors of paint, my two orangey colors and a little bit of white. And keep working out from there. And if I am getting too solid of a color, I can always add back in. I do want my petals to be approximately the same length. That's one feature there of that Gerber daisy, is that it has a very uniform kind of edge to it. So we're going to be adding a bit more petals in between, but let's keep working our way out. So I'm going to go ahead and do a full one on this particular daisy, and then I'll just show you how to get started on each of these with the colors, and then I'll let you keep going on your own. So I'll keep working my way out here, and again I'm going to kind of tap off the ends, make sure that they're kind of nice and crisp, and I'll keep going here. Now after I do this one thing that will be important is to step away from your painting, and that will help you to see, okay, are all of my petals the same size, or the same length I should really say, because it's very easy to have it be lopsided. So forgive me if mine's a little lopsided, because especially from this angle, I have a hard time telling if I'm doing it all real even. So I will also take a moment to look at that and make sure that my petals are all about the same length and that it looks nice and even. So continuing on all the way around. So I've gotten back to the start now, and I'm thinking that these look like they might be just a speck short, and so lengthening those up. And now I'm going to go ahead and go in with maybe just a little bit deeper orange here, and I'm going to just kind of place one in between here. And making sure, again, that they're all about the same length. Now I can have a little gap here and there, but these are generally a fairly fully petaled flower. So I'm basically just filling in those little gaps in between with orange, and hopefully that's going to provide a little slight difference so that we still get that texture of each individual petal as we do with these wonderful flowers. Elongate there. And again, they're very, very straight little, spokes, if you will. So again, I'm going to take a look back once I'm done with this. but I hope that that gives you kind of an idea there. Don't worry about this little center piece because we're going to be tapping in some color to represent those really tiny little petals that tend to form right around the, that little center part coming out to the longer petals. So we're going to work on that later, so don't worry about that right now. I'm going to wash out my brush and just demonstrate how to get the colors for the pink and the purple Gerbers. We're going to stick with our small flat brush. And so for that more pinkish one, I'm going to do some red, I'm going to do some white, and a little bit of purple. So again, trying to get some interesting nuances here. I'm going to do the same thing. And again, I want them to be pretty much the same size. If you want this to be a paler pink, you could always add more white into it. But I think I'm going to make this a fairly rich, deeper pink here. Kind of like that one there. So that should get you going on that one. So again, I think that little bit of the white and the purple, just add those little nuances that make this one pop a bit. And so I'll kind of finish that little section off, and I'll finish that one then on my own. And again, I'll make sure that my petals are kind of nice and finished off at the ends, as well as being about the same length, so that it's nice and crisp all the way around. So for that purple one, we're basically going to use the same colors as we did for that pink one, but instead it's going to be mainly purple with just a little hint of that pink and the white. So I already have a little touch of red in my purple, so I think I might just pick up that area and not touch into my red again. And so this one here, again, it's going to just be a purple here. And so I'm going to let you go ahead and work on those on your own. I'll go ahead and get mine finished up as well, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. So you can see that I have finished my flowers now in terms of those larger petals, and I had to really get in front of it in order to make sure that they were all the same size. So make sure that you are seeing it straight on as opposed to the side as I am right now. So we're going to continue on now using our flat brush here, and let's go ahead and get back our little center part of it there. So we're going to use the colors that are in here, but we're going to go just a slight bit darker. So let's go with red and purple now. And I'm going to tap in that little area that's going to surround that round center. And I can take a little hint of white on there as well and get a little bit more texture going on in there. And I'm going to round out my little center piece again, and just as soon as that's dry. So this does need to be fairly dry before we can go back in with our little green and yellow there in the center. But you just want to get that feeling of texture in the center, because that's part of what really makes these flowers so distinct. So we're going to keep going around and create kind of a nice big circle there. I'm going to do the same thing on my purple one there, using a little touch of red, but mainly my dark purple. And I'll do the same thing here. Now see, that little touch of red is really red, so you might want to even wash your brush out and make sure that you don't pick up red again. Red is one of those colors that just really takes over the painting. You know, just a little bit goes a long way, let's put it that way. So we're going to go back over that and again kind of rough that up. It's just a little tapping motion with our small flat brush. I'm going to do a little bit of white now and tap over that again as well. And again, it's these little tiny petals that grow in this center area before they sprout out to these large petals. And again, we might even add a little tiny touch of brown to our purple just to really make that nice and dark and distinguish it from our petals here so that we get that texture. I may need to let that dry and I can always add in a little bit more of that texture. I'm going to certainly wash out my brush now and we'll do our orange one here. And I'm going to just use my orange and my deep yellow and I'm going to tap that in as well. And I'll take a little white on my brush too so that we get that variation. So now we've got that one kind of surrounded as well. All right. I'm adding a bit more white into this one just because it seems to be able to take it, I think because it's a little lighter flower. But we will go back over those once those are dry. So let's continue on and use our small round brush now. So again, we're going to dry it about halfway up the handle so that we don't deal with any little drips making their way down the handle and pooling out onto our canvas just as we touch the canvas. But we're going to take some yellow and some green on that little brush, and you can kind of twist the brush a little bit so that you don't have too much paint kind of gobbed up on that. But these have a fairly thick stem, so I'm not too worried. We're going to be able to press with the full weight of our brush on here, as opposed to in some cases we need to touch very lightly, like when we do a word up here, we'll touch very lightly in order to really control that. But instead, I'm going to be able to just go right down my line there, and I can press my brush all the way down. Now, that's going to need a second layer, but it really won't count as a second layer until it's very dry to take on that second layer. That will give it more richness at that point. And I'm going to go right down my line there as well. Again, I gave myself those pencil lines earlier, and I can still see those through that yellow background paint. So that's handy to use as a guide. And one more here. Now we don't see any leaves on the stems with these flowers, so we won't be doing any leaves. We're just going to be leaving it like this. They're almost like little lollipop flowers. And at this point, let's let everything dry for a few more minutes. And then we'll come back in and add a little more finesse to the centers of our flowers. We'll add another layer to our stems, and then we'll get on to writing a word on there. Of course, you can choose any word that you'd like and really make this your own and something special for you. So we'll be back in just a few minutes. So as you can see, while I was letting things dry, I also added with pencil a word that I decided I would put on here. Of course, this could be any word at all. You want to center it as much as you possibly can. Mine isn't perfectly centered, but I'm okay with that. And that will just prepare me for putting my word on there. So, one thing that I want to mention with regard to penciling in your word is give yourself a little bit more space between the letters than you would normally with just the pencil, because of course the paint is going to be a little thicker than just that pencil line, and so it's going to just require a little bit more space. So I'm going to take my colors here, and I think I'm going to work off of my purpley pink colors and use that for my words colors. So a couple things I want to mention to you is that we want to use our small round brush, and we also want to make sure that we don't have too much paint on there because otherwise you're going to have real thick lines like this. Now that actually might be okay, but I'm going to use my paintbrush just very lightly on the canvas so that I can really control the thickness of my paint, my paint marks for the letters. And the other thing that I want to let you know is that you want to actually tuck your elbow in nice and tight to your waist. That will give you a little bit of leverage. You're going to want to make sure that you're choked up right below the ferrule of your paintbrush here. So the ferrule is that silver part that holds the bristles to the handle. And you want to hold this on your lap. You don't want to try to do this on the easel. I certainly would not attempt to do this from the side on the easel. And so you need to have this right in front of you, and you want to make sure that things are pretty dry so that you can also use the side of your palm there as some leverage. So I'm going to dip into my paint. I'm going to use my pink and my purple, and I'm going to twirl my brush off like this so that I get paint on the tip there, but not gobbed up too much on the full brush. And at that point then I can rest my hand here, and now I can very gently lay in my color right over my pencil lines. And I'll pick up a little more color. You probably will only get about one letter's worth per dip in the paint there. And I might have just enough just to go over this just a touch more. And I am finding actually that I'm pressing fairly firmly on my canvas with my brush, and that's actually a nice thickness for this particular purpose. Gonna dip back in there again and keep going here. And I'm finishing up my word here with the paint. And I'm going to let that dry, and I will evaluate whether I think that needs a second layer or not, but that's easy enough for you to add on your own based on what you feel that you might need. So I might do just a couple touch-ups here and there, but essentially I've got my word on there, and we're now ready to add another layer to our stems. So once again we're going to use a little yellow and green mixed together on there. Twirl it off a little bit so it's not too gobby and you end up with some real thick spots. And we're just going to give this one more nice layer there. And that should be pretty good for our stems. So last thing to do here is let's take our small flat brush again. The flat brush is great for giving texture as opposed to that small round brush that's great for giving line work. So like our stems and our word there, it was nice to have that round brush, but we want that texture again. So we're going to use our yellow and our green, And once again, we're going to tap right in here. And we want a fairly large little, area here. I'm going to add a little white. That's going to help block some of that dark color that we've got on there. So a little white with your yellow and green. And we're now going to enlarge this and get a nice circle right there in the center. And that's going to also have kind of those nice mixtures there of the yellow and green. But it's also picking up some of the depth of color that we have around that, those little small petals. So I'm going to do the same over here. And I want a fairly large little rounded green center there. And one more here. And again, it's nice to kind of, step back and evaluate. Are they about the same size? That sort of thing. Again, I'm having a little hard time from this side perspective to be able to see that, but I think that essentially I'm in pretty good shape there. And I can always adjust that once I look at it straight on. So just tapping that in. And if any of your flowers feel like you need just a little bit more happening in terms of your outer ring, you can always add that in at this time. So I might do just a touch more here because it's drier now and I can get that texture in there much nicer. So I'm going to go around and get that on there. Do the same on my other two flowers here. And this little orange one, you need a little of that white, maybe even a touch of your bright yellow, just to kind of get that little textured, tiny little petals area to show up as that texture that we're looking for. Yeah, I think the yellow with a little touch of the white with our oranges helps there. And let's finish off our purple one as well. Just a little hint of red there. And I'm going to add just a little hint of white on that too, so that I get a little bit more of the ruffly texture of those small petals. And I think we are finished. So there we have it, our Gerber daisy painting. And again, I hope you've had fun not only painting your flowers, but choosing a word and pulling this whole painting together. So, hope you'll join me again to paint soon. Thanks so much.